Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the Maindeck Podcast. This is the only podcast. That's it. This is it. This is the one. This is the only podcast for trading card gamers by trading card gamers that we produce. I guess that part's true. There are certainly other ones, and they're great too, but we're glad that you guys are here to watch us. So if you are a trading card game fan, if you like playing Magic the Gathering, YuGiOh, My Hero Academia, what can we name today? We Cross, Force of Will, all sorts of trading card games. That's
the upcoming amazing card game, Grand Archive.
Yes, we're big Grand Archive fans too. Maybe you're into Nostalgics, MetaZoo,
Chaotic.
Chaotic. Wow, that's an old one.
The Star Wars CCG.
Hey, you referenced it instead of me this time. Thank you. Got that out of the way. It's already been referenced. Zoo Tiles. That's an interesting one coming up. That's been actually, I can't remember if it's been Kickstarter or not. Anyway, whatever. If you're into trading card games, you're in the right place. So today on the Maindeck Podcast, my name's Dan Green. I'm joined by my co-host, Jordan Syverson.
Welcome, everybody.
And today our topic of discussion, when we get to it, will be playing TCGs online, which has just been a big thing ever since the whole thing that happened in the world recently with the disease and stuff. So it's more of a thing than it's ever been before. And I thought it would be kind of interesting to go ahead and just kind of talk about our experiences playing trading card games online. And I'm sure a lot of our listeners, our audience, have their own experiences to share. And if you guys, if you have your own experiences with playing card games online to share that you want to pop down in the comments, we'd love to hear from you. Before we get to that, of course, though, we are going to talk a little bit about what we've been playing lately. So, Jordan, why don't you lead the way here? It's been a while since we had you on. It has been a number of episodes, and a number of months because we missed last month. So what have you been playing lately?
Well, I guess mainly, no shocker to anyone based on the videos that I've been producing, is the My Hero Academia format for the Universes card game.
Very specific, but true.
Yeah, it's very good. I, of course, like it. Big fan of the game. There's a lot of fun deck diversity. I like playing around with all the different sick decks. I have a bunch in the chamber right now that I'm testing and getting excited about. Set 2 had come out. I played in a fair amount of online tournaments for them. And there's also some other random smaller card games that I played. Not necessarily in-person card games, of course, which
hang on a second.
Matches the theme today.
Before you get to the other card games, we're going to talk a little bit about My Hero Academia, because I think the last time I recorded a podcast, I had maybe even said I hadn't even looked into it now. And since then, in the intervening months, I'm like full in, finally. So
yes, he's full in to the point where he's already buying $50 promos.
Hey, you know what? They're beautiful, though. Like, you got to have them.
They're great. They're great.
$50 parallel promos. They're not even like exclusive, like I can only get them as a promo. Like, I have the common version sitting back here, but I don't want them. I want the nice ones. My Hero, man, is like I am so addicted to building decks for this game. I can't be stopped. If anyone pops in our Discord, this happened the other day, and anyone says, anyone have a Mineta 1 list or something? I didn't have one, but I did after 15 minutes, because I was like, I bet I can build one. And I have this personal account on UVS Ultra, the common deck building website for universes in general, where I just have so many lists that have piled up because I just can't stop building new. Okay, what if I built Jiro on the all symbol, and like, what can I put in that? And then you just start like, I find it super, super addictive. If you are a fan of deck building in general, and exploring, all the options, it is one of the games that I feel is the most satisfying to build decks for, and come up with like exactly the right kind of tricks and synergies to make a deck unique. And every character, there's like 66, I think, or something characters right now, and they're 2 sets in, and every character has every character has 3 different symbols you can build around. And then that's before you even get to like individual card choice, which can completely change what a deck is doing too. And that alone, I think, is the hallmark of like this game just has a lot of freedom for building your deck. So really been enjoying that too.
And to anyone who's like new or doesn't know the game, or coming from just like something like Magic, I don't know if that's still the case, but most of the time Magic, like the actual like top tier decks, there's like 5 to 7 that are really like the power players, and you can win with non decks of those, but it takes a sheer amount of luck, or the people that are playing the good decks need to not know what they're doing with them. In this game, from pros to like rookies, the consensus is that at least half of those 66 characters are very tournament viable, and you can see that in some of a lot of the tournaments, the bigger tournaments where people are trying to be the best that they can be. The top cuts are always like the like almost in 16 individual characters most of the time. Like the most that they double up on is like there'll be 2 of a certain character like twice or something. Like the most prominent popular decks will have 2 copies in the top 16, and the rest are individual characters. So
yeah, the I think, what it comes down to is that as much as I'm someone who like absolutely appreciates Magic the Gathering, I've been playing a ton of Arena still and everything. Games like Magic tend to be with the way the resource system pans out and the way that you play cards every turn and everything, tend to have plenty of decisions. Obviously, Magic is a skillful game. But those decision trees are fairly linear in that, like, on turn 1, your options are X and Y. And on turn 2, your options are now, if you didn't play X, X is still there, but now you can play X, Y, or Z. And they sort of just kind of, just push out from that direction, and then you make this decision, and it just kind of branches down. Okay, now my turn 2 can be this, and then because I did this on turn 2, now my turn 3 can be this. Whereas in universes, outside of the first turn where you can't attack, and your options are like fairly linear, straightforward there. It's just kind of what order do you put the foundations in that you're playing or whatever. Outside of that, once you get to like you have some foundations in play, it's turn 2, your options every single turn are completely different based on what you drew and based on what you chose to do last turn, but to this degree where because you see so many new cards and because you can play basically anything in your hand at any point, and it's just a matter of like, should I be playing this right now? Am I going to make the check for this right now? Your options expand so massively that it becomes very hard for 2 competing decks to just kind of have, well, this one's game plan is just more like efficient than this one's game plan, so it wins. There's so much more player agency in selecting what you do. All of the deck's power levels are a little more towards like a middle of a bell curve spread across it. There's certainly ones that are like any life deck in universes tends to have just a little bit better odds than some decks, just because they have like some more options, some more defensive tools that are just some of like the stronger ones in the format. A couple of the life characters just are generally thought of as like, well, they just have a little bit more raw power than some other characters do. And so I think you typically see like life decks tend to be in the top cut pretty much every time. The question is just like how many of them, which characters are being played, and because of the way that those turns pan out, your individual play skill is going to come into play quite a bit more, and you can take any deck and just sort of like play well with those sequences, see kind of have some good foresight into what's going to be happening and play decently into your opponent and still perform really well. And you're like never really just like, well, my opponent just kind of had better cards and better efficiency than I did, so my deck never stood a chance. It's like I never feel that way playing the game, like I just didn't stand a chance. I always come out afterwards and I'm like, okay, I see maybe on that turn I should have held back and built out more, and then like bait them into attacking me so that I have a better next string or something. And it's just full of decisions like that, which I think are a huge boon for it.
Yeah, and because there's so many options, it's less of a I'm going to use this term, but don't take it to heart, because it's not this by any means, but it's the only term I can think of that's close to how I feel about it. A game like Magic is a little bit more, and to some degree things like YuGiOh and DBS as well, and especially Pokemon. The game and format is more solvable, if you will, because of the way the resources are structured. Like there is always when you build your deck, there is an optimal play for every turn for your situation. So it's a lot solvable. Obviously, it'll change based on what your opponent does. That's not always the case. But compared to universes where literally every ability you use and the order you use them in, there's not really this is the most optimal. There's a few times where that's the case.
Mm-hmm.
But most of the time it's like there's no optimal path, so you just kind of have to like have the intuition and a little bit of like bluffing sometimes, because there'll be times where like everything you do your opponent can interact with. Like in Magic, if they don't have creatures and they have, no blue mana, you're pretty well knowing that there's a very minimal or close to zero chance that they can stop you doing whatever you want, so you can just do whatever you want and know that they can't interrupt you. In universes, your opponent gets a priority to do something after everything you do, and then the actual attack, they could block it, they could not, they could try to block it, fail, and like all these options drastically change how you may do it, because you don't know what the opponent has or what they're going to do, if anything.
I want to actually give, for the audience who haven't played this too much, I'm going to give this is like a baby mode example of like a really basic bluff in universes. And when you're a pro player, this is, like I said, this is like, you're used to this kind of thing, and you're already thinking on like way higher levels of bluffing. So don't go and think like, wow, that's all he has for like bluffing. But like, this is just a really basic and easy to understand example. So there's a character in the game who his name it's Dobby, if you're familiar with the show. And he's got two enhances. One is and basically the way he works is you can only use one of those two enhances activated ability when you use an attack. Basically, you can only use one of those two on every attack. You have to choose which one you're going to use, because whichever one, it has to be the first thing you do after you use the attack. So one of them is you can give the attack that you're currently playing +1 speed, +1 damage. Makes it harder to block, makes it do more damage. The other enhance is you can give the next attack you play +3 damage. You use it on this attack, and then the next time you play an attack, it gets more damage. So easiest baby mode bluff in the world. Jordan already got a little smirk because he knows what I'm going to say, is you only plan on it doing one attack on your turn. And you go ahead and you play it. Now, like, if you're just thinking stats, you're like, well, obviously I'm going to buff this attack because I'm not going to play any more attacks. So instead, you play that attack and you say, okay, and now my next attack is going to get +3 damage. And then your opponent goes, oh, well, let's see. He's probably going to try and throw another attack that I really want to stop then. I better conserve my resources. And then they'll just choose not to block it. And then you're like, okay, take it. Now I'll build some foundations. Your turn. And that way, that's just like the really basic bluff that you can do in the game. And the opponent can completely fall for it. And then they'll go, oh, all right, you got me. And then the next turn, you can do it again. And now we're on the second layer, right? And then they're like, okay, I guess I'll block this. And you're like, okay, now I'm going to attack again and attack again. And then now you've gotten them to waste their resources and make it harder for them to block other things in the future. That kind of play is exactly the kind of stuff that, and like, again, that's like the really obvious baseline one. Once you start thinking, wow, how can I like kind of screw with my opponent? You start getting into their mind. But then the game is full of like way deeper plays with way more intricate abilities where you can sort of predict how your opponent's going to respond to this, and your ability to get in your opponent's mindset is one harder in this game, I found, than Magic. In Magic, it's a little easier once you get past those basic levels of just like play dudes and attack, and you start thinking, what does my opponent need to do to win this game, and what are my lines to try and reduce their chances of doing that. There's that kind of layer of getting my opponent's head, okay, my opponent...
The classic Magic bluff is, I'm a blue player, and even though I don't have a counterspell, I leave 2 untapped just because the opponent will think I have a counterspell.
Yeah, but exactly. Like, that is definitely stuff you do. For sure. You got to think, okay, like, my opponent is going to try and resolve this giant thing. I'm going to keep 2 mana open, even though I could do something else that's marginal with it. And then my opponent might go, oh, well, I don't want to cast this until he's tapped out. And then it buys you a turn or something. Like, and I don't want to like discount that, because that's like really good Magic play for sure. And
if you're really good at it as a blue player, you will also think on it and they play basic stuff in the beginning, because then it really drives it home in their head, like, ooh, he is thinking about it. He does have something that could stop me. Maybe I shouldn't play this thing
Yeah.
because he's just gonna counter it.
Yeah, and for sure, and like that's the kind of stuff that in just card games in general that we as like competitive players who like to at least think we're competitive will enjoy, you know, exploring and figuring out how to like get every little edge and play those little mind games so that you feel really good after you, of course, you succeed at them or you call someone's bluff and stuff like that. But Universes is just so like absolutely it's so open. There's so many sort of degrees of freedom for your play every time that like it just feels like there are it feels to me like someone who's still like compared to the good players like relatively new. It feels like there's this infinite amount of experience I have to gain still to get even close to like what the pro players are thinking of, which I think for some people could be intimidating. And for other people, it's very exciting because there's something to be said about games where, like Magic, where you can play a few games and already feel like you're like making really good plays and stuff. But if you're playing with a play group who's more experienced in My Hero Academia or something, and you're gonna start butting your head against a wall pretty quickly, where it's like, wow, like why do I constantly lose all of the time? And you really do have to go in understanding that there's a skill differential and it's really big in this game. It's harder to just like win because you sequenced, you know, the kind of the obvious normal sequence that you do in Magic. It's like, here's a red deck. Red decks aren't brainless. I always argue that they certainly are, but like it's way easier just to like go play guy attack. Okay, turn 2, play guy attack. Turn 3, play guy attack, and like win the game. That's way more possible to do in a game like Magic with a basic aggressive deck. It's really hard to just have like an obvious sequence in Universes, and that makes it harder for a new player to just like pick up those feel good wins right away if they're playing against more competitive players. So
Another
yeah, go ahead.
thing for that, I think I'll just bring up because I know it's a meme in the community, but a great example just to show how big of a potential skill differential there is there's certain characters in the game that will outright annihilate new players, and to the point where new players will be like, this is impossible to beat. But against a seasoned or even just like a person with some experience, they're just impossible to not beat. A great example I'm gonna bring up is Nomu. Nomu is the biggest like new player just killer, and don't get me wrong, he can just go off and body like other players too, but it's because they don't have the means to stop him. But like knowing what Nomu does and preparing for it makes it so much easier to just outright kill him. But if you're a new player, you're just gonna like throw attacks, pump the damage, like not get through his high health. He's gonna hit you for 1,000,000 because you didn't hold any blocks. You weren't thinking about what attacks he's gonna have to hold block zone so you can stop his big damage. Because most of his attacks are easy to stop. They just do like half your health in one hit.
Yeah.
But like as a new player, yeah, since I've been teaching people the game recently, like quite a bit, like they've landed on Nomu, and like I'll see them fight each other, and the one guy's like, oh man, Nomu's so dumb, it's so impossible to fight him, and I'll be like, he's not, you just got to do this, and he'll trust me, he's not nearly the boogeyman you think he is. And then the Nomu player would be like, well, I want to try you, let's test your theory, and then complete like didn't touch me once, bodied him, and he's like, what the hell, how did this even happen? I'm like, because if you know what's coming, you plan for it, like you know kind of the overall strategy. He's not as good, he's not bad, but he's not as terrifying as he seems in the beginning. And that's a good example of like the skill differential just in one character. Like how you approach it is going to drastically change your like outcome in the end, because your actual interactions as a player account more than the actual cards you're using most of the time.
Yeah, I mean that's a really perfect example to point out for that, for sure. It's something that happens in every card game, but it's just it's so ingrained in Universes because of how many, you know, options you have for every action you do. It really comes down to your own choices are going to impact that quite a bit.
Yeah.
So any other games you've been playing, Jordan? We've been going on Universes for a long time.
Yeah, so the next two aren't quite like regular card games. They're still digital / online, if you will.
That still counts.
But I played Inscription. Definitely good. It's so good, in fact, it is high up there, almost like game of the year for me. The year it came out last year, or I think this year. I don't remember exactly when it came out. It was this year actually, and it's very good card game. It's a deck builder, so not quite like a collectible card game, but everything about it's good, and it's not quite what you think. It's definitely a game you should go in blind, because it gets better the more you play it, and it's not what you expect, and it just keeps getting better and better. And now they've added a roguelike repeatable mode, so like once you complete the story, you can just play the card game itself on repeat and have different outcomes, which is cool.
So when you say it's a deck builder, it's like a deck building game like Dominion and Ascension stuff. You start with a deck as playing. Those would be when you play that game. Everyone starts with a deck, or in this case, maybe just you start with a deck. And then as you play the game, that deck develops. And once you've finished your session or your campaign or your game or whatever, that deck resets entirely.
Yeah. It's more, and it's more along something like Star Realms, I guess, because in like Dominion, you're not like actively aggressing most of the time, outside of a few random cards. It's like Star Realms to the point where you're trying to kill your opponent. You like summon creatures and stuff and attack them, but then as the game progresses, you'll get more cards, and then every time you fail your run, your deck resets to the base, like squirrel tokens and like a few regular creatures. And it's and you'll get like more powerful abilities and effects, and it's really cool. Highly recommend it to anyone who just vaguely likes card games or even just video games. Great.
If you like any games at all, just play this.
Yeah, basically, like it's a fantastic game, and it's a fantastic experience. It's really fun to go through it. Like I said, it's gonna blindside you with how weird it gets, and it starts off regular, and then it just keeps escalating. You're like, this is dope, and it gets better.
That you kind of made me nervous saying it gets really weird though, or do you just mean it gets really, the abilities get out there, or what?
Yeah, you can get like weird abilities. Like there's a card where it's real crappy when you get it, and actually when you get to like, because you'll be presented with cards sometimes, you're like, you can add these to your deck, and like in the beginning, like I picked it just because I was like, there has to be something. It says it's an ultra rare, but it looks like the worst card in the format. But its secret ability is every time you play it, it gets a permanent like ability on it that goes between plays. So like as you reset the game, you don't have that card in your deck right away, but when you see it again, anything that had permanently changed is still there. So like as you keep failing and playing again and regaining that card, it just gets better and better and better and better and better, which is just like weird and interesting.
That one thing you told me made me more interested in the game than anything you've said so far. That you got to lead with that kind of thing. That sounds really cool. All right. We're checking out Inscription.
Every card you play, you're just like, well, I gotta like get that card in my deck just to see what weird stuff it's randomly gonna do for me.
That sounds cool. I'm definitely checking that out, and hope some of our audience checks it out now too. That sounds really neat.
Yeah, and I will say, when you play it, make sure to play it to completion, because some people haven't experienced large swaths of the game after like it gets really good, because they assume it's just this one thing. But make sure you beat it to completion, because like I said, things will happen, and the cards will drastically change, and even some of the formats of the game change as you progress through the game. But you have to actually there's different sections where you'll beat a boss person who battles you with really intense stuff. And then because it's set up and built as like a roguelike game, a lot of people just assume it's just this all the time. But as you beat all the bosses, more things happen and more of the game opens up and more cards get added. But it's not outright told to you, so you just have to play it until the things start happening. You're like, oh, and it's crazy, and it's good.
That sounds great.
And anyone who plays it knows what I'm talking about. But yeah, the cards get super awesome. It's just
it sounds like there's a lot you're holding back saying here, which is it.
It's just this one of the things that's better to experience the cool effects and stuff. It's a happy.
Yeah, that's exciting. You said anything else? You said
yeah. There's another game actually just recently. I bought it 3 days ago, and I think it's pretty good. Called Stacklands. On it's card game loosely, I guess.
Okay.
Because it uses cards, but it's a fun game. It was on sale for $2 on Steam. It's like a city builder deck building card game, if that makes sense. So
sounds fun. That sounds up my alley.
You'll build this. You'll start with just a villager and a rock and some trees, and if you stack the villager on the tree, after a while he'll mine some like wood out of it, and then you can
Oh.
sell like the wood to the shop to buy booster packs that'll have random other like cards. And, like
What the
sometimes you'll
heck?
get like enemy cards that'll spawn, and you have to like stack your dude on the enemy, and then they battle. And then you can get like you can build spears out of like if you stack a stick card with a flint or like some iron, you'll make a sword, and then if you stack the sword on the person, they become a warrior. The warrior does other tasks slower but have better attack stats. So when you get attacked by like demons or something, you put them on there and they'll battle and they do more damage. It's really neat.
Wow, that sounds really cool too.
Yeah, and it's like it's dirt cheap, but it's really fun, and all the little art are like hand drawn like things. So like the little potato has like a little smiley face on it, and so it's adorable and it's really fun.
Cool. All right. Well, in addition to just my obsession with my hero, we've been playing a little bit of Commander. Of course, get a little bit of that in. I have a couple of decks that I'm working on building. MTG Commander, Magic the Gathering Commander. I got to say that for everybody because otherwise people think there's a card game out there called Commander, which at this point, with how many...
Probably.
Yeah, there's been so many like Kickstarter TCGs and stuff popping up all over the place.
I could see one being called Commander, and it's like a World War II
Yeah.
collectible card game where you have like tanks and infantrymen and different guns that you could equip on them.
Well, yeah, that is not what I've been playing. A little bit of Magic the Gathering Commander. We had some fun sets released recently. Commander Legends Battle for Baldur's Gate came out, which added a whole bunch of kind of neat stuff. I'm working on finishing a Tasha the Witch Queen deck, which I'm really excited about because the entire purpose of that deck is just playing all of my opponent's cards. Instead, and also making little 3/3 demons for no reason when I do it too. So it's just my little demon army protecting me as I take all of your cards and play them. So yeah, just a little bit of that though. And I think the big thing is that I have been streaming. I think actually I started streaming since the last podcast. So if anyone hasn't checked that out, I am on Twitch now, twitch.tv/maindeckgames. /Maindeck Games. Someone already had Maindeck, even though they're not doing anything with it. So /Maindeck Games. Link will be down in the description below. I put up one of our drafts we did on Arena recently, which is a 7X Brokers or Bant, if you're used to the old names, draft deck for Streets of New Capenna. But I've been playing not only Arena on Wednesdays, but every Sunday I've just been messing around with all sorts of different stuff. So we had a Sunday where we played some Tabletop Simulator, My Hero, and I have played some a digital card game that the company Lightmare Studios actually reached out to me and said, hey, do you want to check this out? And I said, yes, I do. And that is called Infinity Wars Classic. And that is actually, I was really impressed with this game. So I have to talk about this for just a little bit, but this game is still basically like an early access on Patreon. It was an old card game. You may have even played it. You may have heard of it. It came out in early 2010s. I'm going to remember the number wrong now. 2012, 2014, something like that. It came out around then, had a few sets, its big thing then was it was the, like, before digital card games were really popular, it was the game where all of the card artwork had animations on it. Now that's something that you see like all the time, but it's a sort of Magic-like game. You know, you're playing dudes and you're attacking your opponent, but the big twist on it that I didn't understand how interesting this was until I really started playing it. There's two big twists. Number one, you know how it's fun when you play Commander and you have a commander and you get to play your commander whenever you want, so you can like build your deck around how cool your commander is. In this game, you get 3 of them, and they can be any creature. So your standard game is you build your deck and you choose 3. I don't remember what they're called. Not creatures, just units. I think 3 units to be your like commanders, and whatever is in their resource cost determines what cards you can play in your deck. So it's not like you don't play lands or anything. There's a bunch of factions. And if your 3 commanders have a red faction symbol, a red faction symbol, and a white faction symbol, you can play anything in your deck that has up to 2 red or up to 1 white faction symbol in it. So you basically like have those unlocked, you know, like the whole time as you're playing. And then otherwise it's every turn you just get +1 resource to spend, and then it resets every turn. So turn 1 you can play something that's 1 resource. Turn 2 you can play something that's 2 resources, etc. So that twist I thought was like really minor until I started playing it and I found it like really interesting because you could build a deck around like I have this 2-drop. I want to play it turn 2 every game, and my whole deck is built around making this 2-drop be really good. I have a deck like that, and it was really fun. He's a little like he looks like the Punisher with wings. We just call him Punisher with wings. I can't remember his name, but I play Punisher with wings on turn 2, and then he has flying, and when he attacks the opponent, then he gets bigger, and it's kind of hard. Flying is a more rare ability in this game, so it's kind of hard to block him. So he just starts getting out of control really quickly, and if the opponent doesn't have removal for him, and I'm playing like some like stuff to try and protect him as well, then he just keeps attacking every turn till he wins. He gets gigantic and wins. So that you can do that kind of stuff, or you can build with like these gigantic, like super powerful creatures. So all you have to do is like stall until you can get to like, I keep getting wrecked by this deck that like has a 7-drop dude that makes it so whenever my stuff dies, he gets it. And so like all he's doing is like waiting, and then, okay, here's this thing, and then wipe your board and take it all. And then I go, oh wow, now I can't win. There's not a possibility for me to win. So that stuff's kind of cool. But then the thing that's really interesting to me is that this game actually has like this huge prediction element because of the way they do the battle system that I haven't really seen done. I haven't seen a battle system done this way, but the idea is that you have an attack zone and a defense zone, and your opponent also has an attack zone and a defense zone. And when you play a creature, you choose which zone it goes into. So you're choosing, okay, for the next turn cycle, this creature is going to be attacking. Or for the next turn cycle, this creature is going to be defending. And you can move them on your turn freely between the zones. But your turns are taken simultaneously. That's the big trick to this. So that you both are doing things, and then once you've locked in your turn, then it resolves everything you did with a passing priority. So on one turn, I'm going to be the one who's my stuff resolved first. On the next turn, they're going to have their stuff resolved first. So you go ahead and you just go, all right, I'm going to put this guy in the attack zone. I'm going to move these 2 guys to the defense zone in this order, because I think this turn he's going to move these guys from the defense zone to his attack zone, and he's going to attack me, and I want to defend them, and these guys will kill all his guys when they attack. And then it starts playing out, and then he like moved everything into defense or whatever, and then just defended my guy and killed me. I'm like, I predicted that wrong or whatever. I guess and that's what's really interesting. And the way that that priority system changes how when you play like kill spells and stuff, there's some really interesting ones that are like, destroy this creature if it's in the attack zone. It's a really cheap kill spell, but you have to predict that it's going to be there. And your opponent can be like, he might be playing that. I'm going to move this to the defense zone and try and like ace him if he plays it and does that, moves the dragon to the defense zone. I'm like, why would you do that? They did it to stop my kill spell, So like that kind of stuff is really fascinating. And it's the plan is the game is going to be free to play when it fully launches. It is currently, like I said, early access through their Patreon, which gives you when you get the game, you get every card in it. That's the big thing. I've got to say that part. That's the selling point to the game. You just have everything from the start. You can start deck building with everything in the game from the very start of it, and they're just using cosmetics as like their unlockables. So when you do that, all of your cards are grayscale and like I think not animated or something. And then as you play the game, you unlock color versions, animations, and then special frames and all sorts of cool stuff. So the idea is that once the game is, they're going to have a Kickstarter to add an additional set to it. And that should be coming pretty soon, I think. They've still been like working. We did have some bugs as we were playing in our streams. There were some pretty rough bugs that would like cause games to crash and stuff. So they're still working those out. But once those are kind of done, they're going to put the Kickstarter up. You're going to have access to kickstarting it to, I think, get an account where you'll start with lots of cool cosmetics and everything. But otherwise, once the game is out of this kind of early access period, you'll be able to just hop onto Steam, download it, start playing immediately. And it is something I after playing it, as long as they can get those bugs worked out and everything, I recommend people check it out because it just is it's just an interesting, different take on things. And I think if you play a few games, you'll start to realize this is actually like pretty fun to like figure out how to predict from turn to turn what's going to happen. And there are some pretty crazy like combos I've seen people play on me too. So lots of interesting stuff to explore in that game.
All right.
So
I haven't had a chance to look at it yet, but I have it downloaded.
Yeah,
I launched it once and then it told me that my account wasn't like hooked up, and I was like, oh well, I'll try again later. And then
Oh,
I got busy and later never happened.
all right. Well, that's all good. When it's free to play too, you'll be able to hop on and play some. But it's definitely a cool game. I recommend people check it out for sure, and check out their Kickstarter when it goes live if you do enjoy what you're seeing. So that kind of wraps it up, though. I haven't been playing too much. It's been so much My Hero Academia, and then a little bit of Magic, a little bit of that. I have a couple. I'm hoping I have a friend in the area who picked up some WeCross, and I want to play with him to get some experience playing that game too. So I'm hoping in a future podcast I'll be able to report back and say I finally got to play that game. But for
what about YuGiOh?
I mean, sorry, yeah, on a stream recently we've been playing I've been playing through the Game Boy Advance game YuGiOh Worldwide Edition Stairway to the Destined Duel, which is a really I don't know, how do you review this game? It's not good. But it's entertaining, right? It's because you're basically reviewing a very limited version of the original release of Yu-Gi-Oh, where all of the monsters were, so there's just a set of them that are objectively better than 90% of the other cards in the game or more. Sure. And you have super inconsistent and resource intensive special summoning methods where like fusion is awful. Ritual summons fusion are awful. It's and the game is just like, there's nothing to it other than you just pick an opponent and play them, and you do that over and over again.
You can talk to people in the town,
and they do absolutely nothing. They tell you the stupidest. Actually, will say, to their credit, there's one of them who tells you should probably keep your deck as low as you can, because that's good for drawing cards that you want. And good advice for a new card gamer. Like, absolutely, you should consider doing that in most card games. Yeah. But other than that, which are like just, I mean, I did it a couple times. Like, maybe someone will like give me a pack or something. But then I started looking up some stuff online. I don't think anyone does anything for you. I think you just want to keep playing opponents.
My favorite part about the game is how they'll play it at something, and then they'll be like, do you want to respond and cancel it? But they won't tell you what the effect that's happening even does.
Yeah. The thing that's so annoying is like, I can't read the card when they play it. And some Yu-Gi-Oh cards are like just a library book full of like text, and so he played trap card. Do you want to respond? I don't know. What does it do? And there's no way.
What is trap card?
There's no way that you can't read the text on the card. It doesn't show the picture. They're just black boxes until you're like doing the thing where you look at a card and zoom into it to look at it. So,
and I don't even think it tells you what the card's name is. It literally just says they're activating a magic card, or they're activating a trap card, or they're activating a flip effect. And they're just like, well, what is it? Who's doing it?
Yeah. And like, you actually don't even get to know the attack of the monster unless you see it in that just flash on the screen. So
after
like,
you've already accepted the damage too.
Yeah, well, it's like they're like, play a monster. I'm like, do you want to activate something? I know I have trap hole in play, and the fact that it's asking me means I can trap hole it, but I don't know if my current monsters are bigger than it, and it doesn't matter at all, right? So it's like, yeah, I guess I'll just be safe and use the trap hole because I don't know, because I just didn't look for the split second where the number appeared. So it's a real janky game. I'm planning on finishing it, like getting the completion, because I feel like I put time into it now and I'm committed and I have to get that done. So I think this Sunday we are going to be continuing to play it until we get I think we have to beat Pegasus and then maybe like Bandit Keith or something like that. And then we have to beat some ghouls at some point too. But like, I'm getting to the point now where I'm winning almost every match because my deck is getting better. And because we summon Magician of Black Chaos like a beast with our sweet ritual summons, and the opponent like can't do anything about it because we're smart and we play around their torrential tributes and stuff. But yeah, it's not a good game, but we've been having fun with it in stream. So hey, hop on the next Sunday or two. Join me if you want to see that happening on Twitch. Again, links down in the description. So with that said, let's move on to the actual topic of today's conversation, because I think this just became like gushing about universes and then like blasting old Game Boy Advance Yu-Gi-Oh games. Today we're talking about playing TCGs online. So actually we were kind of already talking about this a little bit, because there are multiple ways that you can play TCGs online. And one of the most popular ones is digital TCGs. However, everyone kind of knows how those work, right? You hop on and you matchmake and you play someone, and then you get salty or whatever because you lost, and then you do it again. And you repeat until...
You get mad at the nameless, faceless person.
Yeah, exactly. You curse their name, and you make up in your head.
Call them a cheater.
You make up in your head this vision of who they are, and they're just like the worst person in the world, and they deserve all the unhappiness or something. And then you start up a new match, and then you maybe have fun sometime. But I really want to talk about the thing that I think is a more something that fewer players are willing to do right away, because it involves things that you're not used to doing, which is like webcam play. Is one of the big things that has become very popular for TCGs right now. And I bring this up partially, the reason for the topic right now is because we've been running our leagues in Discord, which have been going really well. But I have heard from some people like, I haven't played on webcam yet, and I'm nervous about it. Because like, it's more like you're in person with the faceless stranger from MTG Arena. And so you already assume they're like this awful person, right? And like you do one thing wrong, and they're going to be like, you're disqualified from the tournament. I'm deleting your computer from existence or something like, but really it's not usually like that. And Jordan, I'm going to let you lead the way on this topic, because you're the one who has more webcam play experience than I do. I played a little bit of My Hero webcam. We play Commander games webcam and everything, but you recently had a pretty stunning little regional run with a Shigaraki in My Hero Regional. So tell me about how you feel in general about webcam play. How does it work for you?
If I'm being honest, webcam play is okay.
Yeah.
I'm not a huge fan of it. I do it because it needs to be done. But I think me and a lot of people, like in general, aren't big fans of it. I understand completely why they do it, though. But it's not perfect. It's not good. I think it would be better if they had a more clear, concise outline of what is required. I know they don't, because they want to just have everyone include as much as possible. But they really need to set like standards for it. Because one of the main complaints I have is, not everyone's setup is created equal. And I'm not expecting people to have like, big fancy cameras and a bunch of light and like, stuff that actually would cost money to have a setup, because you already paid money for your cards. You just want to play your cards. But they should have at least a bare minimum. Like, one of the things that I come across a lot with players is they'll have cameras that are so poorly in focus or blurry that I can barely tell what cards they're even playing or what the stuff on the cards is. And that's bad. And like, if this was like 5-10 years ago, it would have been, yes, acceptable, because the cheaper cameras back then were just awful. But today, like the $20 like Logitech webcam has 720p resolution. Like, there's no reason they should have a camera that's so blurry that it looks like Vaseline is smeared on the lens. Also, the other thing is the way they position their cameras bothers me, because there was a time where I fought a person whose camera window was so small that they had like their deck, and then their playfield was just like almost in a stack, because they didn't have space on their camera because it was so close to their surface that they had that there. There was no room for their hand, to the point where the person like had to not hold his hand in his hand, and he just have cards face down. And it was bad enough to where it was a detriment to him as well, because anytime he'd flip his hand over to look at what cards he has, because the cards are not allowed to leave the view range, otherwise that's a DQ essentially. Because if the cards leave the view range, there's no way to prove that you aren't grabbing a card next to you on the desk and putting it in your hand and stuff. Which cheating is a whole nother thing that I won't get into, because that's obvious that people can much easier cheat when you can only see what they want you to see. But like, this guy would literally like have to flip his whole hand over, and the whole game I just saw every card in his hand, because he just didn't have his camera set up properly. And I don't know if he just didn't realize that I could see. I mean, he had to have. There's no way he didn't know that like I could see his whole hand. But like stuff like that, and like there are sometimes where you'll get people and they're, everything is fine, it's all good, no problem. But then there's also like just connection issues sometimes, and it's not always the players, it'll be the server. There was one of the times actually at the regional where the table they assigned us to, and it was just that table because I was able to connect to like the tables around me and other people's tables just fine. But when me or my opponent tried to just connect to that table, it would disconnect both of us immediately, and we'd never be able to get to our table. And we eventually like got a judge, and they just assigned us to a different table, and it was fine. But like stuff like that happens. Sometimes the whole server just breaks, and then everyone disconnects, and then there's a huge issue because you want to think the best of people, but if you have everyone just disconnect and you can no longer see what's happening for like a minute, what happened? Did the cards get shifted around? Did someone shift a life total? Like, there's just a bunch of problems that can occur. Even if you have a group of people that are 100% goodwill, good-natured, don't mess it up, there's still like issues that happen. It's not the greatest. But again, it is a method to play, and I like playing. I'm also a person who prefers to have cards in hand, and I know I'm not alone in that. So like the feel of being in person without being in person is a good thing. I do like that. I like having the cards there. Of course, it's really good for the developers because they have to have the cards, which means they're buying product. It's not like other ones where people who haven't purchased the game at all are able to play in tournaments if you have non-webcam events. But yeah, so it's like a mixed bag. It works. It gets the job done. Another great point about them that I actually really love is the fact that it allows people who normally don't have the means to or don't have the ability to on that particular weekend or whatever travel, across the country to play in some tournament, especially when you have cool prizes most of the time at these bigger tournaments. It allows everyone to have a chance at getting those cool prizes and that cool, whatever the prizes are or whatever renowned there is for winning it. It allows everyone to have a chance without having it be like, well, I couldn't go because I couldn't get work off, or, I didn't have $1,000 to get a round trip plane ticket in a hotel room. So I love that aspect of it for sure. It really, there's tournaments that I just wouldn't have been able to play in because my work schedule or money or something along those lines, or I just didn't want to take 5 days of vacation to go play a card game. So that aspect is really nice.
I think yeah, you got a number of points I can respond to here. There, I totally agree that it's a mixed bag. The way I see it is that, especially when you're looking at these smaller card games, it's no big deal going to your locals to find a Magic tournament. Like that happens all the time. But having players to play Dragon Ball Super, Digimon, My Hero Academia, WeCross, stuff like that. These smaller games can be difficult depending on where you live to find a community. And that can be really frustrating when you're someone who just becomes really interested in these card games like we do. But you just live in an area by your circumstance. You live in an area where it's just not conducive. We've been fortunate in where I live to have some great stores over the years, a number of colleges in our area that have made it so that we have a pretty constant stream of people who want to play all these cool games that we like. But we're not even in a very big city, and not everyone has that kind of luxury. And the fact that if there's been any silver lining to the absolute tragedy that has been the pandemic, it's been that it's sort of made it so that among any other silver linings, this one is that it makes it that any of these card games that we love and we have had trouble maybe getting, people have had trouble finding communities to play with before, have become increasingly active online. And before the pandemic, you never had these like online tournaments, online leagues, something, but it made it so people started to actually go, I can afford a webcam. I can, or I have one because I started having to work from home or something. And I needed one, and now I can use it to play these games online or something. A lot more people just simply have access to those tools. Now, as you said, that doesn't mean that people do it right, or just have access to there's a couple of elements to having a setup be right. One, you need enough space, and you need a webcam that's far enough away to not have that situation, that awful situation that you stated that your opponent had. I see a lot of people who will be like, why is my webcam setup look so bad? Lighting camera work is entirely lighting. It's the light has to bounce off the thing and then go into the camera, and if there isn't light doing that, then the camera just can't see things. That's how a little bit of science lesson. That's how vision works. It's lighting is so difficult. As someone who's been trying to, we've been posting YouTube videos trying to get better and improve our production and everything. You need so much more lighting than you think you do to make things look nice, to make things bright and visible and everything. And when you're talking about taking, especially if you're like have a cheaper webcam or something, and you're trying to point it down in some kind of generally like dark office or something where you can see fine, the camera can't though. The camera needs more lighting in it than you're giving it. And if your stuff's coming out kind of blurry and stuff, it's usually the answer is, honestly, actually, here's something I found. I haven't tested this yet. If you are in the situation, you're trying to make your cameras better. We recently bought for our garage these like $15 or $20, like 1,000-something lumen garage lights. These have become really popular. They're like, there's like doing some as seen on TV stuff, whatever. But basically everyone in my family started buying these garage lights, and we walked in their garage and like, it's brighter than the sun in there now. And, our garage was so just dank and dreary and stuff, and like could hardly see anything. So we just went and we spent like $25 buying a couple sets of these like lights and put them in, and it's like, it's this brighter than the sun in there now. And it's so great. Every time I need to go do something in the garage, I can see absolutely everything. It's wonderful. And I bought these and I thought these just screw into like any normal, any standard light bulb socket. I bet you could get some there, and they're like daylight white, the nice white light. So things are really visible. And I thought, I bet you could rig up something for very cheap, with just like a little can light that you plug in that has a light bulb socket, and then one of these things or whatever, and you will have no trouble seeing anything. Now, I wonder if it's too bright, right? Like that's the one thing.
Especially if it's just like shining right at you.
Right. Well, you don't want it shining at you. You want it shining at the play surface.
At an angle.
Yep,
but you'll be in the view range of it.
Right.
Or at least your eyes will be in the view range of the light because you're standing at the desk.
The ones we got have these little foldable wings. So you can
block it from your face.
This is what I'm saying. You might be able to rig these up. And so this is not a proven thing. This isn't Dan at Maindeck told me to get this and he was totally wrong. I don't know. But if you're like, I'm willing to spend $20 for science to like see if I can like make my webcam thing just like the best ever, maybe give it a try. Like it's, something like that might do the trick, and it's easier than buying like a $60 gigantic studio light or something. Like definitely people need to work on their setups for sure. If they want that. But I think overall it's been a really nice boon just for our, trading card game community to be able to have these kinds of events that they can play in. The fact that people have gotten, so generally capable of doing, even if their setups aren't perfect, of doing webcam events is good for the company, like you said, because they get to continue to sell cards. And I want to ask you, I want to pick your brain about this, Jordan. Since I played Tabletop Simulator, My Hero Academia on stream a few weeks ago. And if I had no other option, I would do it again. But if I have any other option, I'm not doing it again. How do you feel about Tabletop Simulator?
I don't like tabletops. It's a meme that grew legs. If people forgot, Tabletop Simulator, the reason why their old trailer like has such a big emphasis on like throwing pieces around and flipping is because they made it not with the actual intention of having people take it seriously, because it was one of those like simulator games that was just to be fun. It worked, and it does work for certain games and like some board games, but it is not great. It is clunky. building a deck is clunky if you've had to use
it was
it's
so clunky.
awful.
Wow, it was
And
weird.
people don't realize it's one of the easiest things to cheat in. Because you're using it on a computer and macros, it doesn't track any actions at all. It doesn't like tell you when a player does something or interacts. It has some icons that'll flash when things are happening in the moment. So like if you're searching through a deck, you'll have a little eyeball with your player color being like, he's searching through the deck, but it only appears while you're actually searching. So you can do jank stuff like set a macro on your keyboard that uses hotkeys to grab certain cards and put them on the top of your deck. And that little eyeball will flicker for like a fraction of a second because you hit the macro, it does that action almost instantaneous. So if your opponent's not paying attention, you could do stuff like just stack your deck random. And no one can know and they can't prove it. So even if your opponent did call a judge and was like, he did something to his deck, it's like, it's just he said, she said, because there's no log that says that player B did something to his deck. And it's like, it's clunky. It doesn't work. Like it works, but it's very clunky. It's not verifiable. I don't like it. It's annoying to use.
So
it costs money. So like if you wanted someone else to play it, you're like, well, do you want to wait for a Steam sale or spend $25 just to have the ability to play this game? But it does, like you said, it does work. If I had no other option, it's not like the end of the world. But if there's any other option, I will play it. Like I use Untapped when I play games online if it's not webcam, because it works way better. It's super clean. It logs every action that anyone does, like at all. Like it'll tell you when people do it, what exactly they did. So if there is something that is like an illegal play, you can walk it back very easily. If someone tries to cheat, it does it. Now, full disclosure, you can still cheat in Untap, but it's much more involved. You have to know some form of coding. You have to know exactly how to like the back end of Untap is coded, which isn't like super hard to find out, but it's more investment than most people are willing to do casually. So like it takes some setup. You have to know what you're doing, and then it's possible, but it's much more difficult enough to where the casual cheater, if you will, isn't going to bother doing.
I like that this became the podcast where Jordan explains exactly how to cheat in every form of online play.
No, like I just like Untap because it's cleaner, it's easier to see, you can read all the cards, it blows up the cards when you need to see it. Creating a deck is easy. It's easier now that UVS Ultra has an export forum code feature because you can just copy and paste that from My Hero. Sorry, in other card games actually it's really easy too. They have export your deck features, so the prominent deck building software or websites that people use for their respective games, Digimon, Dragon Ball Super, Magic. You can literally just like click a button and then export it into the thing, and your whole deck is there. Your whole deck is there. You can instantly just start playing after you make your deck. Finding opponents are easy. There's a bunch of hotkeys to make stuff easy. It's a little weird on some games, but for the most part, there's a hotkey for everything, and it just works. I've never had a crash. I've never had anything go, because that's another thing too. Sometimes Tabletop Simulator just messes up and crashes. It doesn't happen often nowadays because it's been out for so long, but it still happens. But it's just, yeah. Untap just works, I feel like, better and is just more clean on crossword, and it's free, and it runs in a browser, which means you can run this on literally your phone. Actually, they have a mobile app now. I forgot about that.
Yeah, they do now.
Since the pandemic started, they've completed their mobile app, and it works pretty well. I was actually surprised. I was expecting it to be kind of jank, but it works as good as you'd expect it to based on how good their regular client works. It's just use your finger instead of your mouse, tap stuff and move things around.
We've actually been Maindeck has been a patron of Untapped for a while because we like what they do. That said, though, me personally, I will always take shuffling real cards in my hand over any other sort of online play. Oh
yeah, for sure. The feel of the cards is just better.
It's to the point for me too where I feel like I'd rather just not play a card game than play even as much as I prefer Untap to Tabletop Simulator and everything. Rather than playing either of those two, if I don't have the option of shuffling cards and playing with someone with physical cards, I'll just play like a different video game for my time spent typically, unless it's like I need to like test this deck right now or something, and that's what has to happen, and it has to be this way. And I think
that's another good point as well.
Go
Sorry,
go ahead. Go ahead.
For both untap and tabletop, whichever one you prefer. The one thing I do like about the digital formats having an option there is it allows you, especially if you're not the type like us where we just buy bonkers amounts of cards and have everything. If you're just buying singles to play the decks you want to play, it allows you to play test extensively with every card in the format. And then you just, once you are happy with your deck, then you're like, cool, now I'll buy these specific cards. Instead of, because especially in universes, I know it is this way in some other card games too, but in my experience, universes is more so like this. The deck on paper performs differently than you think it will. And it happens in other games, but in universes specifically, there's been combos and like ideas that I've had that I'm like, this is going to be so sick. And then in play, I'm like, this can be way better if I do this. So like if I would have bought those cards, play tested them, I would have been sad. And then half the deck is different now. So like being able to test it on tap first, then be like, all right, now this is working the way I want it to. Then buy the cards is a nice boon.
That is exactly what happened when I played on Tabletop Simulator. Is I was trying a Mina Ashido 2 deck, and on paper I thought, yeah, this seems pretty sick, and I played it and it was kind of a wet noodle. And I was like, okay, that wasn't the route. That wasn't the route to go. And so it was nice. It was really nice to be able to get that testing done.
But I wholly agree with you. Cards in hand trumps anything all the time. Just the feeling, and then I think I just lost my. Sorry, Shane Duckworth is a big proponent of. He pretty much just doesn't play it because part of the interaction is your opponent and being there with your opponent, so you can read their body language as well. And I agree with that as well. Like you're missing half the game sometimes if you're not there with your opponent to see their nervousness, to see when they think they have it. Like sometimes that gives you good tells. Sometimes there's attacks that you maybe wouldn't have held back because you're like, your opponent just looks too confident with his 2 cards in hand. He has the block. He knows it. I'll just wait till next turn and use this for a block.
That is absolutely something that you experience. Definitely in universes, but actually let's talk about Magic for a second too, because everything's a little different if there's an online digital client, like an official one, right? Like MTG Arena is the preferred way to play digital or to play Magic online. MTG Online still exists, but it's a man, that's a piece of software, all right. Very, very, talk about clunky. Like that's what that is. Just old. Arena, clean, slick, simple to play. But let's talk about when earlier you were talking about simple bluffs in Magic, where you wait your opponent, make your opponent wait on early plays that there's no chance you're going to counter or something. And you go, all right, it resolves or whatever. Now, can you do that in Arena? Yes. Do people do that in Arena typically? No, because it involves you going through and clicking to like hold priority on everything, and then it feels really annoying because you have to start clicking the button to continue all the time, no matter what your opponent's doing. You can also hold, I think you can hold spacebar or shift or something to hold priority during certain moments. But it turns out for most players, it's just like a couple too many steps to have them do something where if they're playing in person, they are much more willing, because it's just part of that social experience, to do that kind of stuff. So the play isn't actually even quite the same, from that respect, when you're playing competitively on Arena compared to if you're like at an in-person tournament playing with people. And it's the point where I'm someone who absolutely will always be like, let me think, okay, it resolves or whatever, kind of stuff. But in Arena, I don't even bother. Like, whatever. Like, if I have it, I have it. If I don't, I don't. It's just what I do. And
sometimes that happens too. You don't even know if the person's actually thinking about it. You're like, did they just AFK?
Yeah.
Like, because of the video game mentality, like the second someone's not doing something for more than like 3 seconds, you're like, did they just go get a drink of water or something? Why is the timer burning down? Come on.
Yeah, exactly.
Hurry up. Like, do your thing.
It does promote just a totally different experience, I think. However, if I have an itch to play a card game, I will still much rather play a digital card game than even like my current favorite card game on Tabletop Simulator. I'm going to play Arena before I play MHA on Tabletop Simulator, or before I play MHA on Untapped.
Yeah, for sure.
Because it's
so much more user-friendly and satisfying to play because they have all the cool effects. It's not just basic card being put on a mat. It's like does all the cool stuff, and it's just faster and more integrated. It's just a better experience. I agree with that.
A huge part of it is just how how easy it is for the game to flow, how freely everything works. And the more like little stutters and stops and what button do I press to draw a card again, and like all that kind of stuff, like, wait, how do I flip this? Like, did this go in the right spot in my graveyard? Like, what's going on here? The more of that, the more I just get kind of annoyed and frustrated, and it detracts enough from my enjoyment of the experience where I'd rather just play a different game entirely than play that. Whereas I find with webcam play, it's not my preferred still. I want to do it in person where like you're saying, I want to have that body language. I want to have that just the speed. There still is clunkiness to webcam play is the thing. It's not the same speed as just being able to play in person. And there's a lot of like, okay, what does that do? Like which foundations do you have in play right now? Like, are those tapped? Like there's all this kind of stuff.
My favorite is, what zone is this? Like 4 times, because you can't see the little colored circle on the card that's like,
yeah,
like 3 feet from the camera.
It creates all these little stutters where like 100% of the time, if I can play in person on a day, I skipped the webcam provisional last weekend so that I could play locals. And I have no regrets, even though like the provisional prizes right now are great. I just wanted to go play the game without any of the stutters. It's those little bits that add up and frustrate me enough where I'd rather just take a much lower EV event just to have more fun playing it. That all said, okay, so that like sounds like I'm saying don't play webcam, and I'm not, because the preface to all this was webcam gives us access to things that we wouldn't normally have. And so like I've been hearing a lot of reports from our league players. We just finished I still can't believe this, a 67 player My Hero Academia league on our Discord, which was like, blew me away. That was awesome. It was our first one. We had 67 people come out to play. And I've had so far, and people are very nice in the community, but I've heard nothing but positive feedback about the event. People saying they really enjoyed having the opportunity to play these games with people. Our leagues are structured so that they're play when you want, over a week. You can play up to 3 games in a week, and you just find opponents when you have time. So they're not like the provisional or something where you have to go, okay, well,
block out an entire day.
Yep, this day I'm only sitting at my computer and playing webcam events. It's instead, you know what? I got an hour. Let me see if there's someone who wants to play right now. And you can record up to 3 of those games per week. And people are really and the reason I do this, and this is like, I didn't mean to have this podcast just be like Dan explains why he made leagues. But the reason that I set it up this way in particular is because of how annoyed I get playing webcam events. And being able to pull out that time restraint, pull out that sort of like nervousness about the like caliber of the event or whatever. Like I when I played in the provisional webcam provisional, I played a few rounds in one month or 2 ago. I was nervous going into it. I was like, I don't know who I'm going to face here. I don't know. It's my first webcam event, and I don't want to screw up. I don't want to put my hand in the wrong place and get disqualified or something, So I made this way so that it's largely leagues are just a casual event where you can come in, find an opponent. We intentionally don't put time limits on the rounds. Yes, there are decks that can be a little more abusive in that type of situation, but it's a concession we make. Most players don't play those decks because it's casual enough. The way we weight prizes is focused on playing and not winning, largely. And so it's not something where we have a lot of issues with it typically. And I've also found it from some feedback here, some people enjoyed the opportunity of being able to play against these like grindy decks that they don't normally get to play against, because it broadens your horizons when you're playing that. If someone does sit down from you at a tournament now with Mineta 2 or something in My Hero, this is an example, he's a very control-y character. If you've been playing the league and you played some of these people playing this deck, you've seen more of the lines of play, and you might be able to now like figure out how to win the game faster and take actual wins against this opponent where previously, just because people, if it's a character people don't play because they're like, well, you got to have enough time to win, and he's too slow or something, then you will go up against someone who's actually been practicing with this character and have had no experience playing against him, and you're not going to have a chance to win. So I think there's a boon to that too, of just being able to like not have any of those hurdles to the time in the event, and being able to just play your matches until they're finished. And I feel that at least, it makes it so that I'm more interested in playing in an event like that personally, because I can just fit it into my schedule when I want to, and I can choose to do things that make me less annoyed with the game that way, and that makes me more interested in playing. So, overall, I think webcam events are a nice thing to have, and that's why we support them in this way. And I think if there's any take-home message for anyone who hasn't played one, it's that I think you shouldn't be too afraid of playing them. If, join our leagues, right, is a great place to start. But even in the provisionals, even in the regionals, like those prizes are insane. You shouldn't be too afraid of hopping in and trying them. But you do want to think about your setup, right? You do want to figure out where to put your webcam above your desk somehow. Most people just put it on like their monitor and point it down or something, right? Mm-hmm. Point it angled towards their table. But definitely think about your lighting to make things easier on you. But it shouldn't be that as scary as it is for people, I think, too.
Yeah, and the lighting doesn't need to be anything crazy, too. Like, Jess played in the regional as well. And, of course, I have my fancy lights because I do the videos. But she just had the regular lights in the living room. And they were very sufficient. Everyone was able to see her stuff fine. I think the most important part is the camera being at least, like, a quality where you can, make out the picture on your card at least. Because most players that are going to play an upper level tournament, like, they'll know what the card is based on the picture. They might not know all the details, so they can just ask you that. But the important part is position your camera in such a way. If I was the one making the rules for what your webcam should be, position in such a way where you can see an entire mat's worth of space at a decent angle, so we can identify what the cards are, and then for your own personal, you don't have to do this. It just bothers me that some people have their camera positioned directly above, because then you have the problem where the opponent's going to be able to see your hand, or at least enough of your hand to where they know what's in your hand. It's better to position it kind of like you said, like you put it on your monitor, angle it down, and then you sit kind of a little bit far away. Green screen back up. So that way they're looking at you the way they look at you across the table. So position your camera as though you were positioning your opponent's head. You want them to see your field, and then you from the front. So you can hold your hand up, and you can see your cards, but they can't see it, but they can always see where your hand is at all times. Because that's one of the few rules that they have for it.
Fixing the green screen. There we go.
The one thing that the rule they always have is your hand and your hands, like your hand of cards and your hand, must always be in view at all times. And anytime your hands would leave the view, you have to do a thing where you bring it in, you have to show your palms up and your palms down to make sure you're not palming a card, and then you can handle any card. But I think that's the best advice I can give, is position your camera in such a way where you're imagining your opponent's head looking from that direction, because that way it's easier to position it far enough away where they can see your whole field, and you don't have to show them your hand when you're playing.
Yeah, that's really good advice. And what what you'll need to do each in any event will sort of be dependent on the game and the company running it too. I think Jasco for My Hero is a little bit more strict than some other games are. So you do want to at least just like look at what the sort of the guidelines are. And if you're concerned at all, just pop onto like whatever Discord or whatever and just ask, hey, I was planning on playing in this event that's coming up, this online event. What do I need to know about, what are some tips you have? Most communities are great and we'll just help you out. And if your first experience is going to be with one of our leagues, just hop on there and hop into our Discord in the link down below and just ask me there, and we'll fill you in on whatever we kind of expect. But because we're pretty casual, our expectations are pretty low. And if anyone is really cheating in our leagues to win like a $30 worth of product or something, I guess like if at the risk of being permanently banned from the server instead. It's like the risk reward just isn't very high, right? So we don't expect it to happen too much. So, or the risk is too high compared to the reward. But yeah, I think we've gone a bit well over time here, but really, well, we had a lot to talk about, and I really appreciate all your thoughts, especially Jordan on online play, because you've been definitely at the forefront of it in our individual group here. So it's been really nice to hear some of your tips and everything. And I hope the audience kind of appreciated getting some of those. And if you guys have your own experiences playing TCGs online, whether it be through digital specific card games or digital implementations like Tabletop Simulator or Untap, or playing webcam with in major events or just with your friends, we would love to hear what your experiences are like down and share them in the comments below. Let us know what you guys think about playing digital games or playing online TCGs. And with that said, that's going to sort of wrap up this episode of the Maindeck Podcast. We will be back again. Our next episode is planned to be with Kevin, I believe. Kevin's going to be joining us, and it should be a sort of interesting one. This will be a one that's intentionally very focused this time on the My Hero Academia card game, and we're going to be talking about the future a little bit, and it should be kind of fun. So hope you guys come back for that one. Stay tuned for that, and stay tuned for more episodes of the Maindeck Podcast. I've been Dan. This has been Jordan, and we had a great time chatting with you guys, and we will see you guys in the next one. Take care, everyone.